Hi, and welcome to Empower Tomorrow. I'm your host, Kendall Golden, and today I am joined with both of my parents, Jeff and Melissa. Welcome.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
having us again.
Glad to be back.
Yes, and so today we're going to have a fun little conversation about raising children in this day and age, especially women, because I think growing up, society has changed. And just obviously, you have two daughters, and we're very different human beings. And just like raising children who are different and how you really help support and mold as parents your children.
Definitely. I think we both have siblings, and we are both very different from our siblings as well. And so I think for myself, I wanted to raise our daughters who are very, very different. And you can't use the same parenting style because it just doesn't work when their personalities are different.
Yeah, and I guess like how did you like figure out like what works for one kid and what works for another? Because I mean, like reflecting on me as a child, like I've definitely changed a little bit.
You evolved, and your parenting evolves as your children evolve, and what works one day with those children doesn't always work the next.
And I'd say some of it's trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
It's learning and keeping the principle though of treating both fairly might not feel equal, but it's definitely treating them both fairly. So that is a driving principle. For both you and your sister growing up of how mom and I raised you and kind of our approach.
It goes back to I kind of equality versus equity, which you and I both know about being both in the education world,
Yeah.
that not everything is always equal, but it's equitable. It may not look the same, but it's the same, just looks to have different views.
Exactly. I mean that like whole thing of like the equality and like the equal thing is like you're both looking over a fence, but maybe someone needs a few steps up
Mm-hmm.
to get there. And I think that's an important part of raising multiple children is having that lens, but also like trial and error. And so, can you kind of like walk us through like what were some of those trial and error examples for either like me or
I think for you, I would say the trial and error came or started to come more into fruition when I recall picking you up from preschool one day, your first preschool experience, and the teachers were like, she doesn't really talk at school. I'm like, what do you mean? She doesn't talk at school. And she's not eating at school. I'm like, what do you mean she's not eating at school? And it was just you observing the world. Like you talk, it comes from you feel comfortable. And that kind of gave me like, okay, so maybe Kendall's just observing here, but she's more open at home. But also, they came and said that you would be like saving your snacks, like you were born in the depression era, like because you would save things. It's like you were just always that kid from the get-go that was an observer of the world, is my take. And so I think as your eyes opened up to the world, our parenting had to change a little bit.
Yeah, and I think on top of that, when we look at experiences for both you and your sister, of what you were involved with, especially as young kids, of you both excelled in different areas, even though we exposed you to similar opportunities. Your sister went more of a theater type path early on, and you excelled at athletics, and so I think how we fostered that and tried to bring that through growing up through high school, it definitely is one of those, lenses that we have to look at of, differences, but the same from an approach and how mom and I had to pivot based on the personality and
Mm-hmm.
where your interests lied, not necessarily where your sisters did or maybe where mom's or mine did. It was how do we focus on what each of you want to do and explore.
I'm definitely, I think even still to this day, more of that like observer. I'm definitely like the person where I am a go getter in some settings, but like I do like to observe and take in a lot of information to then lead me to my next opportunities. And I feel like I get that a lot from you, Dad,
Hmm.
because like that's how you run. You observe, you figure out like what works best for you, and then you just go for it.
And I'm a girl that just jumps in the water in hopes that I can swim strong enough. But kind of to go back to Dad's comment about your own strengths and stuff, I would say if I was to give a piece of advice to parents now that have multiple siblings, don't have them go into the same extracurriculars because of ease. Like, let's have them both do dance because it's ease if I just drive them to one place. Or they're going to do soccer because I'm doing it's one space. And I see it now with people of even with siblings of college age. Like they go to colleges where their siblings go. But that may not be the right fit for them. They have to go and learn and be on their own and figure out who they are on their own, not what, oh, I'm going to go to ISU because my sister went there and it's just comfortable or I think it's really important that everyone's individual strengths. So there's no competition. There's so much competition raising children within families and then within even competition within the school. It's super important to have that individuality because that provides opportunities for leadership, opportunities for growth, opportunities to figure out who you are and how you're going to leave your mark at that on the field, in the classroom, in
Yeah.
just in the
And I
community.
think, like, going back to that idea of like raising your kids differently, I mean, as like a teacher, I always have to tell that to parents. I mean, I'm sure like mom as well, like parents come in all the time at conferences and was like, well, my kid was at this before, like their older sibling. It was like, kids are so different, and you have to lead with different intentions for both of them. Like, I mean, we both did dance growing up. I obviously wasn't the greatest dancer, so I chose to go other routes, and then I found soccer and running, and that's where I went. And she went to theater, and that's more like the artistic side, and I was the more like sports side of it all. But I think, you know, you have to lead and figure out what works for you as a child and have your parents also help foster that. And I think you guys did a good job. And then we did see that competition kind
Mm-hmm.
of come in once it turned to me and her doing cross country.
Yeah, and I
Yes.
would say that the competition, though, as parents, worked very hard to not foster competition necessarily in the house. I think what happens often is the kids are feeling that competition amongst each other,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not it wasn't Mom or I as parents that were
Yeah.
uh, you know having you compete against each other or comparing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the message that we sent multiple times throughout the years is that the only person you're competing against is yourself, not against others in the family or even in school necessarily. It's how you're doing better and growing individually, and that's where our focus was. Were we great at it 100% of the time? Absolutely not. Nobody is. But I think to the best that we could is the approach that we took with both you and your sister.
Exactly. And I think the whole competition amongst other people, I've never been the greatest at.
I
Let
think
me
it's
compete
internal.
against you. It's for me, I definitely think it's like more internalized of like I need to compete against myself. Um
And that's exactly what I was going to say. Sometimes competition has two ways. It could be an internal competition with yourself, which is definitely what you are your strength. It is a strength and it is a weakness. It can go both ways. Competition could be a good side and a bad. And then with your sister, then competition was within other people, you and other people, not just family. But yours competitions were different. But I think we view competition as bad,
Mm-hmm.
and being competitive is bad. I think you can be competitive to learn to grow from your mistakes and to grow and figure out what drives you to meet your next step in your journey.
Mm-hmm.
Or it can get ugly. And that's where I think parenting comes in, is to raise your kids to be competitive, but at the same time, when they
Mm-hmm.
lose with grace.
And I would disagree with you from the standpoint of competition as being negative. I think competition is good, and I think it is what definitely drove you, both the
Mm-hmm.
internal and external. And to Mom's point about losing with grace, I would also say winning with grace, and I think that's probably the harder lesson to teach is when you win, when you succeed, being graceful, about that, and letting the natural accolades come. And I think back to when you were in high school and your senior year, as far as getting the all conference recognition that you did for cross country. It was academic, it was athletic, and it was just a culmination of all of your effort, your internal and external competition. I know I'm confident other parents were like, oh, that should have been my kid, or what have you. But it was just the natural progression. And so sometimes you get that, other times you might not, but it's the continual drive forward, is where that internal competition, I think, is good. Again, with yourself and with others, always trying to succeed and be better. I think from a parenting standpoint, it's different though, as you're managing two kids' personalities or multiple kids' personalities. That's where you have to kind of refocus the efforts on the individuals and try to have them see the positives from the way that they are growing as as a child or as a young adult within the household.
No, exactly. And I think kind of like you said, like competition can be a bad thing. And I feel like that's very much aligned with how society currently views competition. I mean, we went
Mm-hmm.
it from when I was younger, where it was like, not everybody gets a trophy, to now, well, for the
Yeah,
most part,
you,
we were getting
We
there.
still have
you had
participation
participation
Just
trophies.
trophy.
medals.
But
And,
not as much as I think it's honed in now, or maybe I was just like a little like naive child, probably.
You love the
yes,
participation medals.
But I mean, yeah,
but what are the medals and ribbons that you kept?
only the ones that I placed,
Exactly,
The
the
ones
ones that
you
you earned.
earned.
the ones that I earned. But I think kind of going back to your point, Dad, of like winning with, and having that with grace, I think that's so important. And I feel like, in high school, I got all conference, and that was like a progression. And obviously, sometimes things don't go that way where it's a progression and you get something, but it's how do you view that? And I think we've had a lot of conversations recently
Yes.
with that of like, I keep pushing myself forward throughout my 4 years and doing things, um, I would say, like with grace and with real honesty and competing against myself versus other people within the school, because I don't, that's just not how I view um, the academic world and all of those things. And obviously now I didn't get that like progression culmination, but we've had conversations over, that's okay. It's how do you move forward?
And,
And so,
and I
yeah.
would say you actually did get the progression recognition because of the job that you landed. So that
Exactly.
reward or that recognition is in different avenues than what you might traditionally think.
Mm-hmm.
Being um, a speaker or something along those lines at a graduation or a commencement or something like that. That could be one person's view. Another person's view could be getting, a job. And a third person's view could be getting uh, an ideal job, or, kind of like your situation where you're going to a very strong, district, and it's going to challenge you in different ways than maybe you've experienced thus far. So, I think all of those are different recognitions. It's how you look at it and how you kind of put the lens on it.
No, I feel like that's
Mhm.
totally true. I think you need to put a lens on things to have it from a viewpoint that not only helps you grow, but also helps you succeed and push yourself further.
Mm.
Like the job that I landed, like you said, it's in a great district, it's a great school, and it's gonna challenge me. But I think that challenge for me comes with a lot of like excitement to continue to grow my learning
Mhm.
and to push myself even further. And in an interview that I had, they were like, everything that we've received just, and like all of the awards and all that, it just pushes us to continue to grow ourselves. We're not competing against anyone else, not even ourselves. We're just using those things as stepping stones to
Mhm.
continue to drive us even farther into getting our students to be more successful, giving our teachers and our staff more professional development opportunities. And I think that was very much aligned with me, as now I
Mhm.
will be working there. But I think that also kind of goes back to like your parenting style of like you guys have always pushed me to continue to go more and more and farther to not only grow myself as a human, but grow my leadership as well.
And I would say that we didn't push you. I would
No,
say we supported you.
supported you.
I
That's
think
the
it's
big
your
word,
Definitely.
internal
Mitch.
drive for that.
Yeah.
And as Dad and I disagreed on the competition piece, I think our differences in parenting throughout the years has also impacted choices that there's the good parenting pieces that you get from me, some of the bad ones, and vice versa. I mean, to say that we didn't make mistakes would be a complete lie and a joke.
Yeah.
We all should be laughing. Of course, I made mistakes, but I always tease certain person in our life. I always tried my best. I always tried my best. Because sometimes, trying your best but then you need to look at that part in your parenting and tweak it so it changes. And the progression of my parenting has changed. Um, I think when I had you and your sister, we were young, we were naive, we thought we were in a Pollyanna, world. And as the world changed, our parenting had to change. And as your personalities, changed and some mental health pieces entered into our family's life, parenting had to change. And those changes also affected us and our view of what was important. Because we live in an area where keeping up with the Joneses. And we hopefully wanted to empower our kids to not have to feel like they needed to keep up with the Joneses. I remember I didn't grow up with a lot of money, and I lived in an area that was a little affluent, but I lived in an apartment with not a lot of money. But my mom portrayed us to make the thought that we should always have the same clothes as our friends so we would fit in. But in the reality, I don't think your dad might disagree. I definitely feel like we picked and choose sometimes when we kept up with the Joneses. But most of the time, I felt like we've empowered you to not feel you needed to be like the person next to you in the desk next to you or the house next to you.
No, I agree. I definitely think that I'm not the person who's like, oh, I need to be like the person sitting next to me. I'm very much like independently driven. Like you kind of said
Mm-hmm.
earlier, like my competition is with myself, like that intrinsic motivation. And I think that's like a great pivot into how do you raise someone, like we've talked a lot about me when I was younger, but now how about now?
Mm-hmm.
22 years old, a lot. I've gone through a lot in my life. And so how do you continue to use that trial and error and push your children when they grow and develop and kind of go through more stages? Like, how do you continue to
I,
support in a way?
yeah, I don't think it's as much about trial and error now
Yeah.
as it is about supporting.
Mm-hmm.
And it's supporting what your hopes and dreams are, and that comes from communication with you,
Mm-hmm.
and how we can support you through that journey, whether it's emotional, financial, making choices, helping you make informed decisions, that you are consulting us, as well as other people, as you grow your personal network of individuals that you trust and that you value their opinion. So it's how do we support that phase of your life that you're into now.
I think for myself, I pick and choose how I go about giving my advice. Sometimes I've learned from mistakes. Sometimes you don't always like my opinion, and then you get angry. So now as you're older and you're progressing, I've learned that I kind of pick and choose how I go about. I always support you. I may not always agree, but we always support. That came up recently, about a choice you made that we didn't necessarily agree with, but we supported your choice when you turned down the job offer.
Oh, yeah.
And however, you're an adult. And so now we're more like our dad said, we support, but I'm still your mom and I'm still going to give you my opinion. You may like it or not. But I think now, when you were younger, my focus was on empowering you to figure out your joys in life, making sure you're on task at school, you're focused. And now my parenting is to support you in your choices, but also to remind you how important it is to not be dependent on a significant other in your life, because it's so important as a woman in this day and age to it's okay that you make more money than your husband.
Do you?
No, I don't. I don't.
I'm pretty sure I was told that you make less than a Walmart budget.
I don't. But my job isn't about the money. My job is about empowering the youth. Empowering the next generation to hopefully be successful.
Yeah.
When their parents lack parenting. That is where my now, I may not empower you or parenting, but now I'm trying to empower other parents within my school.
You said something earlier, I think that's very interesting, but it ties back to kind of the theme of this conversation. And I'll ask you, Melissa, when was the last time you looked over her shoulder, and asked for or looked at her grades on any type of routine basis?
Oh, that's so funny that you say that, because I think it started back freshman year. We were like, we're not seeing her grades. We're not. It's been, I would say, well before high school, that because I don't feel like we needed to.
Yeah, and that's where I was going with it, is that different people need different things, and Kendall had that internal drive to make sure that your grades were on track, your assignments were always in. Like, we never had to worry about that with you, and that's that just natural internal motivation that you have. So that's something that we didn't have to do. Other people it could be different for, and I think we were really focused on not being helicopter parents, because
that is definitely, I was strongly recommend parents are not helicopter parents these days.
And I think we recognize that when you're in middle school and as well, and it's just about, again, empowering you to learn to grow, to make mistakes along the way, and to potentially fail along the way, and learn from it, because that's a big part of the support function.
Mm-hmm.
But being helicopter parents, talking to the principal or teachers on your behalf, no, we never did that. And part of that is, ultimately it's on you, because we're not always going to be around. We're not always going to be in every situation with you. And I think that's one of the struggles for a lot of young adults, and definitely kids these days, is that they don't have that independence and that internal fortitude to advocate for themselves. And I think that's, as I reflect back, one of the things that we did, or at least tried to do, was have you and your sister advocate for yourselves instead of
Yes.
us doing it on your behalf.
1,000%. And I think, working with right now a broad range of kids, elementary, middle, and high school, like I totally see, the helicopter parents and a lot of kids just like not being independent. And I think that's like the one thing that I'm always going to be extremely grateful for you guys always supporting me, because like you said, not to that, like you try and raise me to not depend on other people. And I think that is just like how I run my life to this day. And maybe you guys disagree, maybe you
No, you
don't,
do. And sometimes,
maybe it's a little too much
yeah,
sometimes.
sometimes I think you forget that there is another important piece of having that person in your life that's there next to you holding your hand. Not or not holding your hand because you don't want to be touched, but guiding with you, standing next to you. Because there, unfortunately, will be a time when one of us and both of us are not there to guide you, physically.
Yeah.
But you want that person. Sometimes I remind you a lot that it's important to be independent, but to have someone walk with you,
I
next
think,
to you.
yeah. For me personally, I think I'm still figuring out how do I be independent, because that is very much a big part of who I am, is like
Mm-hmm.
very independent. I kind of, as you know, I just kind of do what I do. Even if you say no, like I will still hop on that plane.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I will still jump right in and just try. And, like I turned down that job, but hey, look what came out of it. I got
Yeah.
my dream job. It's just like me leading with I kind of do. And so I think I'm still learning how to welcome someone into my life in that way. But, you learn that, you figure that all out. But I kind of want to go back to Dad, your point on creating independence in kids. And I think that part is super important. And no, you guys have never like checked my grades. And I think allowing your child to become intrinsically motivated is so critical for their success academically, personally, and socially. I think those three things, because we can't always extrinsically motivate. I mean, like in a classroom, everyone's always like, what's your classroom management style? Everyone's like, oh, I just extrinsically motivate people. And that is great. But you also have to find a way to intrinsically motivate you, because that will only push you farther and farther. And when you do fail, it's okay, because you've bought into yourself to continue going. And I recently read somewhere in like failing, it's your first attempt in learning. And I think
I like
for
that.
me too. And I think for parents and kids, I think we're always going to have that first attempt in learning. We're always going to fail. And it's about how do we support each other, because I don't think it's just like on you two or parents to support the kid. Like we're always there for each other. I mean, how many times? I mean, even this morning. I mean, you forgot your suitcase. Who's the first person you called?
Kendall,
Mother.
of course. But so kind of getting to that failure piece,
Yeah.
it's erasers. I think erasers were one of the best inventions for kids. Because you write in a pencil and you make a mistake, it erases. And you learn from that mistake.
Mm-hmm.
I think um, parents forget that it's okay. In this day and age, parents are so focused on their kids making mistakes
Mm-hmm.
and not being perfect.
Well, they're
Yeah.
focused on them not making mistakes.
Yeah, they're for.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
And I think the other part of it is like they're so focused on the grades, and grades are great, but once you get out of school, it's how you're able to manage your
Mm-hmm.
life, because once you stop getting grades, now you're into the real world, and
Mhm.
there are no grades.
Or
Yeah.
or the labeling. Parents don't want their kids labeled.
Mm-hmm.
I know we're involved in a situation in my room right now with a parent who doesn't want their kid having a label
Mm-hmm.
because they're fearful of that label getting out and it going with them and it defining who they are.
Yeah, and I think that's very prevalent, especially like in the society currently. Like people are afraid to fail. People only want their kids to be successful. And I mean, that also kind of goes hand in hand with a lot of people just expect things on a silver platter for them. And now, and we've talked a lot about the fact that like you guys have taught me, and I've was growing up in a family where I had to work and I put in that work for myself, but also to reach those goals. Like in cross country, I had to put in that work to reach those goals. It wasn't you screaming, "Get your fucking wheels on, Ken." It was
It
me.
helps.
It helps a little bit, but maybe not really.
It did.
But
Yeah, I mean, there are so many times you told me to tell mom to just shush. So.
yeah, exactly. I was like, "Can you tell her to shush?" And it's about like that wasn't.
That's my love.
Yeah.
It's my love. It was my love for you, my drive for you, because I feel
But that wasn't what
But
was
that wasn't
motivating
what-
Kendall.
that wasn't what she
No.
needed at that
Right.
moment.
And you
Exactly.
needed to hear that, and that's one of the things that I think parents need to
Yeah.
be able to do is hear what their kids are saying.
And when their
Yes.
kids say it, listen. Be a good listener. Listen, and it may be hurtful. And yes, have you hurt my feelings? Sure. Have you hurt your dad's feelings? Sure. But you're being honest, and so we move forward, and our parenting then changes.
Yeah.
But I have a question to you because you mentioned the word success.
Yes.
Successful. What do you think being successful means? Because that is another word that's put out there a lot. Parents want their kids to be successful, but success to
Are you gonna let her answer?
you. I'm finishing my thought. Welcome to our home. This is our coffee table. Your success could be different than someone else's version of success.
I think that's exactly like what I like preach to all my kids, no matter what classroom I'm in or what area I'm in, right? I think success looks different for every single person. It looks different for my friends. It looks different for you guys. It looks different for me. And so success for me is reaching those milestones that I dream of. It's not maybe what other people dream of. I mean, most people go in, for an example, they go in to education like, I just want to be a teacher. Yes, for me, it was successful for me to get the job that I have and be a teacher. But my next step in gaining more success for me individually is getting that chance to work on policy and being that change maker. And so I think kind of also success is like different based on what avenue I'm in. For our race coming up in June, success is me just freaking finishing and not dying in the mountain because, I haven't been training and, that's my own thing. But that success is me just getting across that finishing line after my 3 laps. I don't care if I have to run or if I have to walk. But that's that. In cross country, in those years where I was struggling with my heart and stuff, it was getting across that finish line. I don't care if I had to collapse at the end, which I did multiple times. It was just getting there. So I think for me, looking at everything, looking at all areas of my life, success is completing what I need to do to continue myself further, to push myself further, to reach that next thing. And I definitely like lead with that. I'm always looking for the
ahead.
next thing. I'm always looking ahead. I'm
The
very.
next thing, you have to enjoy the first steps for a while before you can enjoy the next. You have to enjoy the whole process.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
would say be in the moment and enjoy the moment.
It goes by
Yes.
quick. I mean, parenting goes by so quick. I mean, what's success for you, I view as what's successful for you as not how I would view success for your sister or the person next to me. Or, I mean, Daddy's had great success in his career. Have I? Some people may say that what I do for a living isn't successful. But it is because I'm empowering each one of my students. But you have to enjoy the journey to get to success. I think people forget the enjoyment piece
Yeah,
and the
I
enjoyment of parenthood,
I agree.
goods and bads.
I think that I do enjoy the moment that I'm in, and I like to reflect. Maybe not as much as I should. Enjoy and celebrate my little wins that I have, but I think that enjoyment for me is more of like the completing it and using the tools that I gained from it to do something else with those tools, and that's my enjoyment. Um, but throughout this conversation, obviously, we've talked about parenting, trial and error, meeting your kids where they're at, success, relationships, not being a helicopter parent. What is one piece of advice that you would give to parents that maybe are starting off or parents who are just struggling with their kids? Obviously, that happens.
It does. And I'm going to tell you, there are times when we were struggling, we felt alone from our friends.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you are parents and you're struggling, it's just really important to share. Share your story. Don't be embarrassed to share what's going on in your life, because by you being open and sharing, that can empower another family to feel not alone. Because I think there were times that we felt alone, or at least I felt alone. Not alone, I had your dad, but alone because there was no mirror of someone else I felt out there that was portrayed like what we were going through. I just say share. And it's okay, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to have that moment where you want to throw in the towel and say, I'm not enough, you know? But don't stop. Just keep moving forward. Tomorrow's a new day. And I take that attitude even now, when after I had a rough day, tomorrow's a new day. 10 minutes later, you gotta just let it go. But share. Share your journey, own your mistakes, and just love your children.
What about you, Dad?
So I think I'm going to quote somebody else, and it's a mentor of mine, a friend of mine that passed away a little over a year ago, and it's what his son, said in his eulogy, as kind of his quote, and it's something that this individual had shared with me over time as well, but it really kind of came back up as I was at his funeral. So as a parent, you want to do everything that you can for your kids, empower them, and be there. But the message to give to your kids, and as I reflect back on both you and your sister, I think that Mom and I, did this to the best of our ability, and supported along the way, is work hard, play hard, but have fun.
No, I agree. You gotta work hard, play hard, and have fun. I think as a kid, but also a parent too.
Yeah.
I think it goes both ways, and so this is kind of everyone's reminder as a parent, as a child, to work hard, play hard, have fun, but also share your story. I think that goes both ways, and it's okay to fail, and you have to find that intrinsic motivation either through parents supporting you, but also yourself, and giving your children those opportunities will pay off. I mean,
Give them opportunities to shine.
exactly.
Never dull your child's sparkle.
Yeah, I don't think you've told my sparkle.
No. And I think just remember as your kids get older, and I think we're having more fun now than we did 10 years ago.
We're having different types of fun.
We're having different
Different
types of
types of
fun
fun.
because you have to be able to evolve and grow and just continue to learn. It's not like a straight line path. You got some hills, you got to roll with the punches. But everything will be perfect, everything will be amazing, everything will be your view of success.
There you go.
Perfection is what you view.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for sharing your insights. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.